Welcome in, race fans. This edition of Through the Gears presented by Frontstretch. I'm your host, Tino, and I can't wait to get back into this weekend's NASCAR racing action, this weekend's NASCAR winning action, and this weekend's, for the final time, betting action as we take you through everything you need to know for Phoenix Raceway and the NASCAR Championship weekend. I can't believe it's finally here. The final race of the season. We need to finish strong as we swept the entire round of 8. And before we do just that, before we go even further to finish this season out with a bang and with some profit, I got to give a special shout out to Crystal Sparkle, who commented on last week's video, also Donald Veal, and my man Wyatt Watson as he came on the show and broke down our picks, and we absolutely crushed them. So let's get into all that and more as we go through the gears. Now for the Martinsville recap, and what a race that was at Martinsville Speedway last weekend. Obviously championship implications. We went from the round of 8 to the championship 4 heading into Phoenix now this weekend, but that was one of the best Martinsville races I have ever seen, but especially in this next-gen era, right? When we've had some struggles with short tracks, it was awesome to see that play out. And why didn't I talk about it heading into last week's race? We predicted that that would be a really great race because of what we saw at Homestead Miami and what the playoff picture was producing for those drivers and the high stakes that they needed to win. And a lot of drivers that were competitive heading into Martinsville who have been able to win there in the past. I thought it was a really great race. I was really happy with the fact that all of our picks were right there. I mean, Ryan Blaney cashes out again. And that was something where I'm super excited to say because we are now heading to Phoenix with a 28-1, a 30-1 Ryan Blaney Championship winner ticket. And we talked about it all on the show last week. That was a situation where you had to capitalize if you were going to bet on Ryan Blaney to win that race to also win the championship, because now his odds to do so, we'll get into it a little bit more when we get into the show and through the segments, but I mean, spoiler alert, his odds to win the championship now around plus 200, plus 185, and I have a plus 3,000 number, and I hope you guys do too, because Ryan Blaney ultimately dominated that race when it mattered most. I think he restarted around 10th with 100 laps to go, and he was able to drive through the field, one of the best cars all throughout the night, and it only got stronger, passing guys like William Byron, passing Chase Elliott, and then Kyle Larson as well, the best driver in the sport. 3 of the Hendrick Motorsports cars that are obviously locked and loaded to have a strong run and have great performances as they did, but Blaney was just a little bit better, and that's what it took, and he needed to do it. And to me, it was that grit, it was that, hustle, it was that whatever it takes mentality out of the 12 car, which we've seen before, that heart, that drive to win, to do whatever it takes to get into the championship. We saw him win at Talladega last year. He needed to, and he did. That was a clutch moment. We saw him win at Martinsville last year to get into the championship 4. He does. Then when it comes to championship, he gets that done. Similar path now that we're seeing this year, because he had to win at Martinsville, and he walks it off. And now Ryan Blaney goes into the championship 4 with what pressure? With what pressure for that guy, for that team? They're a bunch of dogs over there in the 12 team. And for him to go back-to-back for the first time since Jimmy Johnson has done it since 2009, 2010, that era is going to be really impressive. It's going to take a lot, but that's really my thought process from the 12 car and seeing how much he wanted to win that race and was able to get it done. Redemption, revenge for what happened at Homestead Miami, getting passed on the final lap. I knew Ryan Blaney was not going to go down without a fight, and that's exactly what he did. And now he has a chance, like I said, to go back to back. But what's even more impressive about that, in my opinion, is the fact that they just don't flinch. They just don't feel pressure, it seems like. He's just so clutch in these moments when it matters most. And with him now going back to the championship, I don't think he'll feel much pressure because he's been in this situation before. So you put Ryan Blaney in a situation, a must-win situation, if you will, and he gets it done. Now, obviously, championship, anything can happen. Maybe you don't need to win to get the championship as a whole, as we saw last year with Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney. But in this same respect, I think Blaney's mad he didn't win their championship race last year. And I think he'll go out and potentially do it again in this one. Stay tuned to see if I keep riding Ryan Blaney to the sunset for back-to-back here for Phoenix this weekend. But another notes on Martinsville, have to talk about the controversy for a little bit, right? William Byron and Christopher Bell, they're at the end. What was crazy to me, and I think this gets overshadowed a little bit with the race manipulation that happened there, was the fact that with this NASCAR playoff format, those two teams, those two drivers were tied at the end of the race. After everything they've been through, all the laps, stages, wins, wrecks, any position that mattered, which is all of them throughout the entire year, brings you points, right? So to be in the NASCAR playoffs and have all that culmination throughout the season, all building up and leading up to that exact moment where two drivers tied to advance to the championship, was really special to me. I have to say this. I, Tino Pattigno III, am a fan of the NASCAR playoff format. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're not, I can understand why. And you have valid reasons for that, right? The best driver throughout the season, the driver with the most wins, should compete for a championship. I can understand and agree with those points, but hear me out. For this NASCAR playoff system that we have right now, it brings a lot of attention and eyeballs to the sport, because when we see things in different sports like the top four in NFL, NBA, MLB, all those sports carry the same type of playoff format. So to have NASCAR and racing be that way is obviously has its pros and cons, but for people tuning in, it's easy to understand, oh, if this driver gets eliminated, he's out, he's done, just like a one game win and you move on, lose and you're out. I do think that having 3 races within the rounds definitely helps to provide the racing and to provide the drivers that perform best with a chance to move on. Let's put it in perspective like this. The Kansas City Chiefs, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, but throughout the course of the season, they weren't always the best team. They weren't always the favorite to win the Super Bowl at times. To me, I feel like teams go through changes throughout a long season. Drivers in NASCAR have the same thing happen to them. They get hot, they get cold, different changes, whether it's crew chief or pit crew adjustments, whatever the case may be. This is very similar to what we're seeing in an NFL style of playoff. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs went on to win the Super Bowl last year, and like I said, they weren't the best team overall, stat-wise, yards per play, whatever the case may be, their win percentage, they still got it done. And that's what it's all about. So for people that say Ryan Blaney last year, oh, he didn't have the strongest season throughout the year, well, so what? He performed when it mattered most in the NASCAR playoffs. He went on to win a championship in impressive fashion. And to me, I feel like now we're sitting in a situation here again. One could point out Joey Logano and say, hey, he had a worse average finish than this driver, and this driver deserves to be in the championship because he has more wins than Joey. Well, hey. Why didn't that driver make the playoffs? Did he not capitalize when it mattered most? Did his crew chief, like Joey Logano's and Paul Wolfe, not make a strategy call, not make an adjustment to the car in Las Vegas to secure the victory over Christopher Bell, who dominated that race? At Homestead Miami Speedway, we saw drivers competing for the win in positions 1st through 7th, all championship drivers that needed to win to potentially get into the championship 4 and lock themselves in to race for a championship. That is the best thing that could actually happen. And when you're watching a race, I tell my buddies who don't watch NASCAR, tune in and watch and see how exciting it is. And when they did, at that moment, they understood everything that was at stake. They understood the drivers doing whatever it takes to be up there racing for the win amongst the other playoff drivers that needed to do so as well. I think that was really huge, and that was something we saw from this playoff format. It was a product of the system. We also take a look at the points too, right? I mentioned Byron and Bell and how close they were. They were tied heading into the championship race. What happened? Obviously, we know the controversy. Well, put that aside. There is nothing more exciting than seeing those points go up and down, +1, -1, +2, -2, tied. There's 0. Who's going to make it in? What's going to happen? Who has the tiebreaker? What you do in the playoff matters then with the tiebreaker rules and everything like that was on the table before everything happened with the controversy there. I'll say this, we haven't had a back-to-back winner in this current NASCAR playoff era, but also since 2009, 2010, so it's been working. We want to see new drivers step up. We want to see champions do whatever it takes to make them be better than the other drivers. And we've seen adjustments, we've seen changes, we've seen different drivers, we've seen some of the same drivers be in the championship 4, but ultimately no one has won back-to-back championships since this new playoff format has been introduced. And I'm okay with that because it brings more excitement to the sport. Whose favorite driver is going to win? Who has a different chance this year? Could it be an underdog driver, just like we see underdog teams in the NFL get hot and win races or games? In the end, I definitely agree some adjustments can be made to improve the system, but I have to say this NASCAR playoffs format is way more exciting to me than seeing Kyle Larson or Tyler Reddick be leading by plus 50 or plus 100 points heading into the final race of the season, where you're watching a race and points go up and down, and it doesn't really matter as much to win as it does right now in this current system. I support anything NASCAR does that has an opportunity to bring more eyes to this great sport that I love. And I hope you guys can appreciate and respect that, because I think the NASCAR playoffs are only going to potentially get better each and every year when we do have the feedback from the fans to make it better and to make the drivers want to win just that much more. Because when you're heading for a championship and you're trying to win it and do whatever it takes, there's nothing better than that. Let's go over to the betting side of things here with some strategies that can help us potentially win this race and hopefully lock in this would be another week of profit all in a row as we swept the round of 8. Like I mentioned, we've been hot throughout this NASCAR playoffs, and I want to win the championship myself. So let's do it here in this one. How can we do that, and how can we prepare for the championship race at Phoenix? Well, I think the biggest thing to know that is within these championship 4 drivers, who has the best chance to win this race, and ultimately, what are their odds looking like to do so? Who in the championship 4 has the best odds? Who's an underdog? Who's a favorite? Let's go through it now for the championship side of things in this race weekend. So first up, Ryan Blaney opens up as a favorite at plus 250. Joey Logano's next up with the same price, Tyler Reddick plus 275, and William Byron at plus 280. This is something I've talked about all season long. Whenever Kyle Larson opens up the sports books throughout the weeks at a plus 300, plus 400 number, I always say we can't touch that at all. I'll never bet that unless it's a championship race, and well, here it is. Those are your championship odds. Now, I think it's important to note too, what happened last year with Ross Chastain, to me, I don't see happening again. Now, there is one driver that I could see potentially doing that and upsetting the championship 4 and winning the championship race. I will talk about that in the next segment and talk about who that is. But aside from that happening, this is the safest way in betting the championship odds to make profit this weekend. Because if a championship driver finishes in second and doesn't win the race, and you bet on him to win the race, because if they win the race, they win the championship, you won't make any money and you'll lose money in that scenario. And we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure with every race weekend, we're doing the best we can to profit. And I feel like in this scenario, if you're unsure or feeling a little cautious with a driver that you think could win the championship and their odds to win the race, just go ahead and bet them to win the championship. Because if a driver sneaks in there or causes chaos at the end and you lose your bet because of that, and you could have had a chance to make some money and you chose to bet the outright winner rather than the championship play, I think that's something that would leave a bad taste in my mouth. Now let's break down the odds for these drivers to win this race outright. First up, it's Ryan Blaney at plus 400. He's the clear favorite to win this race, and there's a reason why. It has to do with the fact that Ryan Blaney, by the numbers at Phoenix Raceway, has 17 starts, 8 top 5s, 12 top 10s, 3 poles, 431 laps led, and a 3.0 average next-gen finish at this racetrack. That's better than anyone in the entire field. Next up on the leaderboard here for the sports books in terms of the drivers in the championship 4 to win this race outright is William Byron at plus 750. And I need to give William Byron the respect he deserves at Phoenix. He did win here last year in the spring race, and in the fall led 95 laps, ultimately coming short of the championship. He's raced in this top 6 to 7 range, I would say, consistently in the last 6 to 7 races at this track as well. So he's been really strong in terms of his running position. Earlier this season, he did finish in 18th. He was running 4th and 6th throughout the stages there. So to me, William Byron, although he does have the results in the past at this track, I'm not sure, based on how they ran in the spring, if they're going to be able to make the right adjustments to this car. Now, I do think he'll be strong. I can see him leading some laps in this one, but does he have what it takes to beat Ryan Blaney? Does he have what it takes to beat Joey Logano or even Tyler Reddick in this one? To me, I'm not too sure about any of those questions, whereas with Blaney, I know for a fact that he can pass those drivers when it matters, like we saw last weekend at Martinsville. Look at Joey Logano now, who's plus 750 to win this race outright, as he won the championship here in 2022 over Ryan Blaney, who finished in second, as Blaney wasn't in the championship, but he did beat his teammate in that fashion to win this race outright, which is what we're talking about now. So Joey Logano in this one, we need to keep in mind he did win in Vegas, and that win in Vegas proved to be really important because in my eyes, when that happened, yeah, Joey drove a great race to put himself in position, but it was the strategy call by his crew chief and Paul Wolfe that was able to provide them the opportunity to win that race, staying out longer and ultimately getting it done at the end. Well, their crew chief and Paul Wolfe, who also won them the race at Nashville with the fuel saving, was so smart to make that call there. You give them a few weeks to prepare since then, I believe they have a strong strategy again in this one. And Joey Logano did win at Vegas when he won his championship in 2022 as well. So that's important to note. I just keep going back to the fact of, can he beat Ryan Blaney? Yes, Ryan Blaney is the favorite, and I talked about all his stats before. But when it was Joey Logano's championship in 2022, like I mentioned earlier, well, Ryan Blaney easily could have passed Joey, I'm thinking, in that one. I'm not talking any race manipulation or anything like that, but he really did not choose to pass Logano, and ultimately, he wasn't blocking anyone necessarily, but no one caught those two Penske drivers. If Ryan Blaney was also racing for a championship, I think he would have won that race and been able to complete a pass because he would have had the motivation to do so, or at least wouldn't been told not to. So, if we're putting Joey Logano up against Ryan Blaney to win this race outright, I'm still picking Ryan Blaney. Your final championship Ford driver to win this race outright would be Tyler Reddick at plus 800. That's great value, but keep in mind what I'm about to tell you. This is not the spring. Well, obviously, Tino, it's the fall race at Phoenix for the championship. Well, I hope Tyler Reddick can think it's the spring, because in the spring race at Phoenix, he's great here. It finished up 10th earlier this year, but he led 68 laps and was really strong. Christopher Bell was the best car all day. He dominated that race, but I think Tyler Reddick was top 2 or top 3 in terms of where he could have finished and where he ran all day. Finished first and second in the stages. But then, now we're seeing him go to the fall race, and in the past 3 fall races, 22nd, 23rd, and 19th. In the past 3 spring races, 10th, 3rd, and 3rd. Reddick knows what he can do to win at this track or ultimately have an opportunity to do so. He has cars fast enough, and I think he's been able to drive really well here. But it's only been in the spring. Tyler Reddick has only been good here in the spring race. So now let's think. Obviously, championship race, they're gonna be in it because they are in it to win it. Now, my point there is they're gonna make the adjustments from the spring to make the car better for the fall. And it's going to be the same racetrack that you raced in the spring. So I do expect Reddick to have a lot more speed. But at the same time, there's no clear indication that will happen. And with that being the case, that's why, although the value's there at plus 800, that's the reason why. He hasn't been able to get close to a top 10 in this race in the fall. And if we're talking about that compared to a driver like Ryan Blaney, who has a 3.0 average finish at this track, I can't pick Tyler Reddick over Ryan Blaney either. We haven't seen a back-to-back winner throughout this entire NASCAR season. I think this is one of the best NASCAR seasons that I've ever seen because of that fact. Having different winners each and every week continues to make it exciting, continues to leave me on the edge of my seat, continues to have me engaged and focused throughout the races, wondering what's going to happen next. Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen this week. It's going to be Ryan Blaney winning back-to-back championships and back-to-back races. Plus 400 for Ryan Blaney. That, to me, is my favorite outright winner for this race at Phoenix. I think he wins the race at Phoenix, something he hasn't done yet, despite having a 3.0 average finish at this racetrack. I put up all the drivers to potentially, if they can beat him. Can Logano beat him? No. Can Byron beat him? No. Can Reddick beat him? No. I think this is Blaney's championship to lose, and I feel like he has no pressure No outside noise. He's locked and loaded, and he's ready to get the win. A lot of confidence right now for that 12 team, which is really factoring my decision there as well. Hey, I do think this will be a strong and competitive race for all 4 Championship 4 drivers. I'm really excited to see. I think they'll all maybe trade the lead and be up there battling for this one. But when it comes to a battle, I think Ryan Blaney always wins that war. And for this next pick, it's going to be a driver who's not in the Championship 4. And he was the driver I was alluding to earlier. That's Christopher Bell. With the way that car drove in the spring, the 20 team was absolutely lights out fast, a rocket ship. Now, with that being the case here, Christopher Bell at plus 550, I think he can play spoiler with that number. I like the value there. I think I can bet on Blaney and Bell with that being the case there, value-wise. I'd also like to say here, I think Bell is motivated. He's looking for revenge after not being able to be put in the Championship 4. If he was in the Championship 4, I'd be talking about the battle between Bell and Blaney a lot more in this one, but he's obviously not here. So Bell to win this race, he'd play spoiler and knock out those other Championship 4 drivers by winning this race in terms of the potential for them to win outright. I think at plus 550, Christopher Bell would be my second pick to win this race outright. If I had to choose another championship driver to potentially win this race, it would be him. I think he gets it done over Byron and Reddick. Byron, I think he's got a good shot at it, but I just like those 2 Team Penske drivers more with the data they can share between each other. The 3 weeks you gave Paul Wolf to prepare, and he's one of the best crew chiefs in the business there as well. Tyler Reddick, he's been strong here in the spring. I believe he'll have a good shot to win it, but I just don't see it happening this time. And hey, I don't like to bet against MJ either. I think Michael Jordan, it's awesome to see him at the track all throughout the season, but I just feel like in this situation with this playoffs and with everything they've been through, he's been working really hard. It's been great to see the 45 team have success, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I do not see him beating those Team Penske drivers. Same thing with the Chevy and William Byron. If I had to rank my Championship 4 at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I would go this: Ryan Blaney champion, Joey Logano in second, William Byron in third, and Tyler Reddick in fourth. I think Tyler Reddick will have a top 2 car. I'm not sure I can trust that team as much as the other guys with their inexperience in this big race in the championship. Some prop plays. I like 3 drivers to get a top 10 in this one. First up is going to be Martinsville Jr. at minus 125 to do so, and I know we've always bet on MTJ, and he really hasn't come through for us this season. But looking at him in his final full-time start in this track and understanding that he has been strong here as well. Last year, he was contending for the lead at times, and it looked like he potentially could have won that race when he was battling with Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney there at the end. I just think MTJ can get it done in this final race for the full-time career at Phoenix. A top 10 finish for him at minus 125 is something that I can bet on and I can just enjoy watching as well. Something that can provide a little bit more profit will be Chase Briscoe at plus 125 for a top 10 finish as well. This is one of his better tracks for Briscoe, and keep in mind, he's motivated to end the season on a strong note for Stewart-Haas Racing, shutting the doors at the end of the season, we know, and that's unfortunate for them, but I think Briscoe really wants to make it a positive moment at the end of the day for that team. Just really have something to hang their hat on and say, we got a top 10 finish, and he did the best he could for that team the whole entire season, and it's been great to see them make the playoffs and everything like that. So Chase Briscoe at plus 125 for a top 10 finish is something I can see, and hey, wouldn't that be a storybook finish to see maybe Chase Briscoe finish in 9th over Martin Truex Jr. finishing in 10th? Those 2 drivers, obviously MTJ stepping out, and Briscoe will be stepping into that ride next year. And last up is going to go with Michael McDowell at plus 500 for a top 10 finish. I love the value there for a driver that consistently is getting better at this track, having a better average speed rating in each of the times we've been here moving forward and later on in his career. The Fords have been fast at this track, and I think Michael McDowell is not one to slow down when it gets time to cross the finish line for his final lap. And hey, this is his last race with Front Row Motorsports as well. If you're looking at those storylines, I feel like these 3 drivers for a top 10 finish fits well into that category. Favorite plays, we don't have too much to talk about in this one because of the fact that the odds are super shorter than usual, a little bit smaller values out there because of being the championship race and those championship 4 drivers being pushed up to the top as they should be in this one. So hey, I'm going to go all in and say Ryan Blaney at plus 400 to win this race is my favorite play. For the final time this season, that'll do it for this edition of Through the Gears. I appreciate everyone tuning in a lot. It really means the world to me to see the comments on the videos, to see the likes and shares, and ultimately just being able to connect with the community is something that I've really been striving for, and being able to accomplish that goal this season with Frontstretch and Through the Gears really means a lot to me, and it's been an important part of my life, and each and every week being able to look forward to doing this show and putting out great content for you guys and doing the best I can to produce winners for you each and every week, but ultimately just hopefully something you can look forward to and have some excitement in your day, and something that you can watch and tune in and feel like we can talk about bets and talk about winners and just talk about NASCAR, because that is something that I love to do in my life each and every day. I appreciate Frontstretch as well for giving me this opportunity. Shout out to Derek Yoder as well, who tossed me the reins of host for this program, and I'm super glad he did so. I've had so much fun doing it. I hope you guys have had so much fun watching and tuning in each and every week. And hey, let me know who you think is going to win the race and going to win the championship in the comments below. I'll be sure to hit you guys back and say thank you for tuning in. And also, if you have any questions about NASCAR betting, we can talk about them there. If you want to keep the conversations going all throughout the off season and all until next year, follow me on social media at Tino, PATTIGNO. Stay tuned there. I'll be producing more NASCAR content all throughout the off season, daily, weekly, interviews with drivers, fans, and much more. Some experiences from the track that I've had this year that I haven't shared yet, so be sure to stay tuned into my social media, and that's a good way to reach out to me if you like, and follow me, and I'll follow you back as we can continue on this relationship between the NASCAR community and myself, and the NASCAR betting community, the Frontstretch community, and everyone who's tuning in to this show. And you also got to stay tuned in to the Stock Car Scoop for the final time this season after the NASCAR Championship, as they break down everything from this past season, everything from this past race after Phoenix, and it's going to be a great time there. So be sure you're locked and loaded, so tuning in there, as that's always a great show. I always like watching it, so be sure you guys are listening and tuning into that too. I don't know what the future holds in store for me, if I'll be continuing Through the Gears next year or not, but either way, I know I'll have my own platform at Tino Pattigno that you can follow me on for more NASCAR betting analysis and content, and I really hope you do choose to do so, because it's been great to interact with you guys like I've mentioned. No matter where I am though, I hope everyone has a happy off season, happy holidays, happy new year, and everything in between there. I'm Tino Pattigno. It's been an awesome season as we went through the gears.